All right, y'all, live on New Year's Eve morning. It is another episode of the Noelcast. We're recording here at 8:05 or so. So if you are joining us in the live chat, thanks so much. And I have this weird occasion where I liked the YouTube channel, and now I am hearing myself in my microphone, or my earbud. I apologize on the delay. Anyway, let's talk it over. Let's talk about a 10-win season, bud. And hey, this will be fun. I mean, we'll acknowledge some concerns we have about what we saw and maybe some projections towards next year. But this season was a exceptional season for Florida State, one that Mike Norvell really needed to have to. I don't know that he needed to have 10 wins, but he probably needed to get to 8 with a bowl game, and certainly did that and more, and really has set the stage for what could very well be a very, very special season next year. So, Bud, fortunate enough to be able to spend time with you the past couple of days, got to watch the game together. Let's talk it over, man.
Man, absolutely great time in Orlando. I mean, first of all, the bowl experience was good, right? Like Camping World Stadium sucks. The actual stadium's okay. The area around it is not really necessarily where you want to tailgate in, but we made the best of it for sure. I know a lot of people also partied downtown and then took an Uber or Lyft or whatever down to the stadium. So that was that was obviously an option. You got to see a lot of people pregame. Ran into Matt Thompson, workshopped a little idea for a little Noelcast pregame event next year because they're coming to my city, LSU, and the Noles to open the season. But like a great bowl atmosphere once you got inside the stadium. I thought the Cheez-It Bowl people did well. Both fan bases showed up, which I was kind of worried about with all the travel stuff and all the flights being canceled. If you were tracking the ticket prices, the parking passes were like 5x the ticket cost. On Ticketmaster, it's like, okay, you can get in the door for $40, but you can't park a car for less than 400. So, that was interesting, man. But I harkened back to this time last year, and I made the comment that it's getting late early for Mike. Now, that did not mean that Mike was on the hot seat. We actually put out a video specifically saying, guys, like we know the people who would make this call, and they are all in on Mike as far as giving him time. But if he's going to work out here, if he's going to do something to the standard that a FSU fan wants, it's moving day. It's getting late early. You need to do something. And he did. He went out, he won 10 games. Give his staff, which you have some good recruiters on staff, you have some bad recruiters on staff, and you got a lot of average recruiters on staff. Give them a little bit better product to sell on the recruiting trail. Give players a reason to believe, both the high school and the transfer portal, that coming to Tallahassee is the right move to make. And this is the season that Mike had to have if he wants to work out here long term. You're going to look, if he does work out here long term, if he has a Jimbo Fisher or Bobby Bowden type run, and to me, long term is like 10 years in college football nowadays. I don't think like 40 years or 30
Man,
years.
If you get to 8, you have been at a place for quite a while. You really have. We all need to redefine what long term in coaching is.
Exactly. Like if this works out, you're going to look back at this season. This is what you got to have, man. Got to hit this pitch out of the ballpark, and he did, big time. And, the game was not always pretty, but the magnitude of the season, if he can parlay it into better recruiting, this is the year we'll look back and we'll say, man, God, he had to have that. He was coming off a season where he started 0-4, kept the team together. We knew we liked the culture, right? Now we like the coaching a little better. We like the player development on the offensive side of the football. Like there's a lot of stuff to be excited about here. So I just set the table, had to have it, and did. That's like my number one takeaway from this overall.
I'll set the table when you have to have it, and you do, is when you have to have great advice going through a home buying process. Didn't acknowledge our sponsors at the gate. Do want to hear FSU Home Loans, legendary team of Chad and Shannon, are people that we've been fortunate to work with for as long as we are. Actually working on my own little project with Shannon, Bud, up in a house in Virginia. So we'll take a couple months to see that come through, but it's a cool little project and great to be able to directly work with these guys. So they're the best. You guys know it. Shannon is exceptional dude, and one of the hardest working people I've ever interacted with. And Chad is right there as well. So FSU Home Loans, 844 FSU Loan. Reach out to us if you'd like for us to put you in touch with them. But great people as always, and we thank them for their support of the Nolecast.
No doubt about it. Also, if you guys are watching us live, please drop us that like. We got a long day of college football today, man. I know my wife is excited that this is the last year of New Year's Eve college football playoff semifinal. So I was up this morning going through my clips that I took of the Under Armour game or Under Armour practice yesterday. Right after this, I got to head out to the Under Armour practices, and then I'll be heading back home to do live content on the for Cover 3. And it's about to be a 16-hour day of college football, and I'm not complaining about it because it's a really, I'm blessed to have the job, but it will be a highly caffeinated day. All right, so talking about the game, I watched it with you, and I felt like it was. We already said the experience was good, the bowl experience was good, et cetera. Like clearly, Florida State was trying hard, and like I thought Oklahoma played hard. Clearly, the guys who actually played for them, and it was both. It was a frustrating game to watch, I think, but I was never really nervous. And we talked about this. We're like, look, FSU's going to get to mid-30s or low 40s, barring something really strange. And we're saying this to each other, right? Like, even as they only have 11 points with 20 minutes gone by in the ball game. And I think the reason is because even though you had frustrating drops, I mean, Johnny Wilson had one, Cam McDonald had one. You had a guy fall down at one point. You were still scheming guys wide open consistently. And like you're getting chunk plays. And it just, you have such a trust in this offense against the vast majority of defenses that you're going to play. And especially because, like, credit to Oklahoma, they did some interesting stuff here upon the rewatch, right? They were able, I'm not going to say they out-schemed you. They just did run some different stuff. They took away some of your counter stuff. They took away some of your OZ stuff. They really tried to box you in. We saw Wake Forest do a little bit of this, and I was very encouraged by the counters to what Oklahoma did that somewhat mimicked some of what Wake did at times. They had a little bit different formation. They weren't running some of the wide nine stuff that Wake did. Florida State was ready for that for the most part. Took a little while to actually see it put points on the board, but their counters, I thought, were evident somewhat early in this. They consistently moved the football. You put up 300 yards in the first half, and you still have the chalk going into the second half. I'm like, look, if the defense can't get its head out of its butt, and if you're not going to kick a field goal every time you're in the red zone. You'll score a touchdown there eventually, or you'll just score on an explosive play. It's just it's a great feeling to have, to know, like, all right, you're still feeling good even when you're down 13 points or 11 points or whatever the biggest margin was. My God, do we really think this is going to last? I don't.
No, I mean, with this offense right now, I think there's just a sense of confidence that you can have with it that ultimately it's going to get going. You know what you have. You know what 13 is turned into, which is legitimately one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah.
And you know that, Johnny's going to drop the ball that you have to turn around and apologize to somebody because you're like, damn it, he dropped it. And then he's going to make the absurd catch. And the offense ultimately is, what it's going to be. And it's this, like, so I'm not trying to get too over my skis, but the offense is I love watching. It's fun to watch. It's beautiful to see some of the opportunities created, to see what they, all of a sudden, what they're starting to do with a kid like Douglas, Marquiston Douglas. I realize we have a couple Douglases on the team. I love it, man. The offense, I was joking with a friend of mine that our offense is a complex, like, wonderful bottle of wine, similar to a Tarpon Cellars. Our defense is more like Boone's Farm. We're very simple, can't make adjustments, have to stay within a very, very small kind of shell in which we have to operate within. But
you break it out when you're actually out of your Tarpon Cellars and you want to keep getting drunk, and you hope nobody notices that we are now that we're not now serving the Boone's Farm.
We've moved over to Mad Dog 2020. So
it's so tough. Well coached, man. Like,
it's exceptionally well coached.
They have some talent deficiencies still on this offense. and they coach well around it. Like they have counters to their counters. And it's just the quality of offensive coaching is really high on this offense, I think. Like, I mean, do you think any of these offensive linemen that are currently starting will get drafted at any point in their careers?
No, not current. No,
I agree. Like,
no,
I don't think Robert
see it
Scott's a draft pick unless he
immediately.
improves a lot.
Robert Scott's the one that I debate on, and if Robert Scott is seen more as a guard than a tackle, then I think Scott is potentially draftable. Otherwise, well, we'll have to see. But as of right now, I think you've improved along the defensive line significantly. But like and we can talk about this in a second, you're like surefire draftable guys is the cavalry that's coming. It's not what you have on your team right now. Oh, and
Right.
well, you may have one or two kids that you will deploy next year that are on the team that aren't playing that are very draftable. But of what you have right now, you're getting everything that you can out of your offensive line.
I mean, and you scheme around that well. And they're a pretty well coached unit for what they have, in my opinion, right? Like Jordan has improved a ton. That's quality coaching, and a credit to him for the work and the persistence that he has put in and maintained. Obviously, Johnny Wilson is a guy who they have developed very well and has played well and will get drafted, when he goes pro. Like, I don't think Pittman's a draft pick, right? Like he's based on just size and speed. If you're not a big guy, you need to run fast, and he doesn't. Like, he's a good college player. Like, is Ontario Wilson a draft pick? Maybe if you got a combine invite or something and ran something insane time, like a team would take a stab on him. But you have a couple guys who are NFL players. You have a couple dudes who are quality college players, and you got some guys who are just average college players. But you can kind of coach your way to points within reason, within certain margins, right? In college football. And they do. And they are way over here on the, we're going to get the absolute most out of the talent on almost every game that they play offensively. There's not a lot of games where it's like, all right, they just got they just got badly out coached relative to the talent differential, either positive or negative, on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I love the play to Douglas that they ran. They went tempo. This is actually the play that John Harbaugh, not Jim Harbaugh, but John Harbaugh ran, or not ran, but Belichick ran this on, and some other people have run this too. Willie actually ran this at Oregon successfully. I know Clemson ran it with Taj Boyd. A couple people have pointed out some other instances, but I think the most notable instance of this is the play that Belichick ran against John Harbaugh, the coach of the Ravens. Was that a playoff game or was it like a late season game? And I know because Harbaugh threw a fit, and the NFL, I think now that was the play that led to the rule change where they announced who's eligible on each play, right? So what they did was you take your tackle, you line him up in the slot. He's not eligible to go out for a pass. Marquise Douglas is a huge tight end. And I agree with you, long-term development wise, if he's your number 3 tight end next year behind Morlock and Bell, I'm really excited about Marquise Douglas in 24 because that's a long-term projection type guy. That's a hell of a number 3 to have, by the way, if he is your 3 next year. I don't know how all the chips will fall, but given the fact that you went out and got 2 stud tight ends in the transfer portal, you got to feel much better about that room. And Oklahoma, actually, they cover this play okay, but it's still it just fits your personnel well. They use their pieces well. Douglas has a body that, is he tackle size? No, but he's not H-back size. If you line him up there in that left tackle spot, but he's actually eligible because of formation, it may take the defense a second to realize, wait a second, that's not the tackle, right? And Oklahoma actually saw it, to their credit. I thought they were really well coached on defense. Venable does a hell of a job, and they'll probably be pretty salty defensively once they get some decent players there. And you score on it because it's executed well. It didn't have to be, WTFO to score. But to your point of using the pieces, man, that really showed it. That's a great play to run when you have a jumbo tight end.
Yeah.
And you use tempo on it.
Love the play that they ran earlier in the game to Douglas too. I think it was maybe a 13-yard gain or something, but it was just creating space for him on the opposite sideline of where
that little slip screen to the boundary.
Yeah, where we watched the game play out in front of us. I just love what you can do with that kid, and I think Douglas is has a unique enough body that I don't think he's going to get lost in the wash next year. The tight ends, I think you'll use Bell in a manner that will create opportunities for Douglas. I'll put it that way. I certainly have no idea how the coaches are going to do things. I'm not trying to suggest otherwise, but when you look at those three kids, I think they're all unique enough and have the ability to create opportunities that I think all three of them will see an awful lot of playing time. And I'm exceptionally excited to see what Mark Easton develops into.
Specifically, I think in a couple areas that he could help you as well as he improves as a blocker. Like as his blocking meets his size, that is something, assuming it happens, will be really encouraging for the offense, right? So you were 0 of 3 on 4th downs. You also kicked, how many short field goals did you have to kick in this game, right? Here we go. I was sorting by chronological. Now I'm sorting by team. So you turned it over on downs 3 times. I think so 0 of 3 on 4th down, right? You missed a field goal. You also kicked another field goal. If you get better play in the red zone, which I think is an area where the offensive line gets exposed some because they just don't have like NFL talent on that offensive line right now. Like Atkins is scheming, right? I think you're better in short yardage. I think you're better in the red zone. I think you're better in sort of like critical situational football where you have to mash people because you can go bigger if you want in those situations. And clearly, like they try to do that now. And all due respect to like Wyatt Rector and Preston Daniel and certainly McDonald's not a blocker. But if you get better big body tight end play, that's a way that you can improve in the red zone, even if the offensive line doesn't take some huge step forward, which maybe they will. But like those are areas where like a Douglas can help you going forward, obviously. And like Johnny Wilson having even better body control, being more of a red zone threat than he already is. Like you saw it against Louisville. Okay. You saw it some in this game. Those are areas where like, if you're looking for more wins on the margins, how does this go from like I think it's the top 10 offense in college football. All right. How does it go from like a top 10 to a top 5? It's probably the physicality element, most likely, and making sure that you have a deep threat as well now that Wilson's gone. Those are kind of the 2 areas of concern, or just not concern, but areas to improve, I guess. How do you go from A to an A+?
Yeah. If you're listening, we're talking about Ontario Wilson, Johnny Wilson still to make a decision.
Yes.
So, and Johnny, I don't know if we said this. Johnny, in my opinion, absolutely has the ability to be a draftable player. Just based off some of the comments, I think people might have misunderstood what we were talking about earlier. But no, Johnny has a chance to be a draftable player. Johnny has a chance to be a exceptionally high-profile player next year. If Florida State does what I think it can do and what the offense will be doing, Johnny Wilson will be a very significant piece to that. So
you had 587 yards, 8.2 per play, got stopped in the red zone twice and had 3 turnovers on downs. Like that's like your B game did that. Like you could have played even better on offense potentially, right? Like I think that shows the potential of this offense. Oklahoma's a bad defense. They threw some junk at you. Okay. You swung at a couple curveballs early and missed. You also, I think that they hung a couple curveballs early. You hit them about 500 feet foul in terms of like you created the explosive play. You dropped it or the throw was slightly off. But that was that reason. It was like, okay, is this defense really going to allow 40 plus points to an offense that literally had the same 5 starters on offensive line for the entire year and 4 of them were missing for this game? Like, do we really think that's going to happen for the entire freaking game? Because if so, then maybe I'm worried. But if not, I'm like, okay, I trust Mike. I've watched Mike at Memphis. I've watched his offenses here. I trust them to score unless you're just getting physically whipped. And they were not.
Yep. Want to thank Matt Thompson and his team at Charlie Park and all of the For the Table Restaurant Group properties. Like we said, we are working on doing something with Matt next to kick off the first game of next year, which will be the previously referenced LSU game in Orlando. So thank you, as always, to Matt. Charlie Park's a fantastic rooftop bar, Tallahassee's best rooftop experience, and would very much encourage you to check it out when you are in Tallahassee the next time, or if you're in Tallahassee the next time that you want to have a special evening or something like that. So again, charlieparkrooftopbar.com. Thank you again to Matt Thompson and his team. But we reference frequently that we've been fortunate to do this since 2009, 2010, whenever it was we started working together. One of my favorite things is maybe pre-show if we're both in the note sheet and you've got some ideas that you've texted me, I've got an idea that I'm putting in there. So, and then all of a sudden, a show comes together. In the 13 or 14 years that we've been doing the show, I don't think I've ever bolded anything in the show notes before. But when I saw you put in the previously referenced note about Oklahoma's offensive line, it certainly put things into perspective. We knew in the preview, we talking about both of their tackles being out. So by no means did I expect Oklahoma to have, OL one, so to say, in the game. But Oklahoma had 5 players of the offensive line play north of 600 snaps over the season. One of those players played in the Cheez-It Bowl. And Oklahoma's offensive line still had the better day. So it's just a reference point as to where you need to continue to improve upon. This team, if we're going to have the large dreams of CFB playoffs and more next year, you've got to get significantly better along the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And you just got to have a level of physicality to you that, right now you've still got to develop.
Agreed. So look, we also need to address that there were some guys on FSU's defense who were out, right? Fabian Lovett was hurt, and you had some defensive backs, go down in the game. And I totally agree with you that, but I think you could make the playoff next year. Now, would I pick you like even money to make the playoff? No, but I think you can make the playoff next year with this defense. I also think you'd probably get embarrassed in a playoff game with this defense if you actually made it. Like, my thought on making the playoff next year is offense plus schedule, right? But yet again, when this defensive coaching staff goes up against an offense with a pulse, and I really didn't know if this Oklahoma offense was going to have a pulse, because if you lost, if you were down 4 offensive line starters on FSU's offensive line, you wouldn't have expectations. You wouldn't expect an offensive performance like this, right? And if you did, you'd be like, oh my God, that defense was a joke. They got badly outcoached in this game again. Florida outcoached them as well. Remember we went into the game against Florida. I'm going to pull this up just so I make sure I have this right. Okay. I'll pull it up right now. Score. And we said, okay, who's out for these dudes? Who's in? You knew that Florida had 1 receiver, right? 1. The rest of them were like third stringers. They were missing their other starters. They were missing their second stringers. FSU did not force a single other receiver to catch a pass against Florida. Yet they repeatedly found Pearsall for 148 yards. They get outcoached, period. And they're not a good recruiting staff on the defensive side for the most part. So what would you say you do here?
Yeah.
To pull the office,
yeah, I think
your
two
in that bowl game. Sorry,
your 2 recruiters on that staff are your ends and your defensive line coaches are your 2 recruiters. It would appear as though, whereas Fuller may not be a dynamic high school recruiter, he does seem to have significant traction in the portal, which is interesting to view. I think that may just be a maturity thing. I think Fuller's pitch may land better with a 20-year-old than it does a 16-year-old, and I've referenced 16 is when you start to develop these relationships with kids. It's just going to be an interesting situation. I don't think you'll see any significant changes here, but I'm not purviewed to any more information than anybody else is when it comes to stuff like that. At linebacker, you have a pretty good developer of talent. That's once you get them in there. So you just got to try to figure out how to make this work, where you can continue to improve upon. Obviously, the decisions that Fabian, Jared, and Jamie make will go a long way in deciding what kind of defense you have next year. And whether or not you continue to bring in kids in the portal, we'll just have to see where and how that plays out.
Totally. All right. So to dive into the defense stuff a little bit more, I don't think you got physically whipped at the point of attack by Oklahoma's backups. I think you got out schemed and out coached. Okay. They did not do a very good job handling tempo, which why? You got a month to prep for this. Oklahoma runs at a blistering tempo. They routinely had bad angles created for them by Oklahoma's offense to where it's like sometimes it looks like you're getting physically whipped because they have great angles to block you. That's coaching and scheming. When FSU's offense does that for its offensive line, we say that they're out coaching the defense, right? We have to say the same thing when Oklahoma takes 4 backup offensive linemen who are significant drop-offs, I think, from the starters, who 3 of them are going to be NFL players. I don't know about the 4th kid. And they do that to you. That's bad coaching on your part. Like the only good games this defense has this year really are against offenses that had like injured or legitimate backup quarterbacks or a bunch of other guys out on the offense. So I guess maybe I was wrong to expect they could do that to an offense that had that many guys out on the offensive line. Like, this is a badly coached defense. It just is. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not giving these guys average. It's not a well-coached defense. Now, a couple guys stood out to me that I think maybe you can build on some. I thought AZ Thomas played well. Like, that's good. It's encouraging that he continued to come on throughout the season. I think they were playing 2-trap there, and he peels off and almost has a pick. But it was like one of the few times where Gabriel was legitimately confused in that game. You need to create more confusion. You don't coach zone defense well at all. Teams know you have to play man. Your run fits and your rotations off this stuff are not good enough. If you're going to be super simple, be Iowa. Be extremely well coached. Have great fundamentals. Have good technique. Because Iowa doesn't, they're kind of simple. I mean, there's some variations of what they do, but just people kind of know what you get when you play Iowa. But they make you earn it all the time. And this defense doesn't, man. It's a problem. Like let's say you have the season, like the magical season. You run it 12-0 and you get to the playoff. It's going to be a weird feeling. You're going to be super happy, and then you're like, oh, God, I don't trust these guys getting stops in a big-time game.
Yeah, I acknowledge your nerves. I would still say from where we were 3 years ago.
Oh, it would be incredible.
Yeah. It would be exceptional. It would be incredible. It would be incredible for numerous reasons, and not just the incredible experience in 2023. For the broader landscape of college football, you would certainly assure yourself that the landscape won't be changing without you being part of it. I'll certainly put it that way. So, and I know what you're saying, man. I'm not trying to argue with you, but it would be a great sense of anxiety. I'll put it that way. And, you and I would have similar concerns about what might happen, but to an extent you get to that point in the season and you just roll the dice, and maybe they roll your way, but yeah, we'll see.
100%. Also, it would be a great thing to be able to recruit off to go to go into the playoff,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think you actually have a shot, but you probably need to go 12-0. I don't know if 11-1 is getting in after the bowl week that the ACC had yesterday. Now,
yeah,
they did beat UCLA, which is good, but you allowed 290 on the ground if you take out sacks. That's discouraging, we'll see. Some people in the comments want to know, was this a top 20 defense and the best pass defense in the ACC? If you watch these games and sincerely believe that, that's on you.
Yep. Back to what we were discussing there, though. It was interesting and exciting and fun to watch an Orange Bowl last night and not really be all that concerned as to Tennessee or Clemson won, because both of those teams taking a loss would be quite fine with me. But you can start to watch games like that and be like, you know what? maybe Clemson needs to win for our playoff hopes of next year. And like you, that's the filter in which you're starting to consume college football again as a Florida State fan. Like you're thinking about, okay, so if we're trying to be a playoff team next year, what's the trade-off worth? Clemson winning a bowl game and maybe feeling a little bit better about itself going into the year, or Clemson winning a bowl game and that being a little bit significant of a better potential, bump that you could get from that. I think in theory, it's not a wild extrapolation to see yourself playing Clemson twice next year. So
it's probably the expectation, right?
And it's if you do have room for a loss, you kind of have to win the LSU game so that you can if Clemson 1.0 and South Carolina goes wrong, you can you'll still face them in the hypothetical theory that we're talking about. But if you do have playoff aspirations, you're going to need to win game one, obviously, and then you're going to need the loser in game one to go on and have a pretty decent season in their own right. So,
right.
And the fact that we're even sitting here talking about that is still freaking crazy based off
incredible.
where we were 2 or 3 years ago, and awesome. But it's nice to it's nice to not go and do a season wondering whether or not you're going to get 5 or 6 wins. So,
yeah, I mean, like, just telling you all, FSU's win total in our next year is probably going to start with a 9. And it's probably going to have like a 0.5 in there. I mean, like, there's 6 games where you're going to be a big favorite in, and there's 6 games that I'm not saying are coin flips. Like, you'll probably be favored. You're probably favored in somewhere between 9 to 12 games next year. Like, I don't know if you're going to be favored over LSU, potentially. Just depends on who else comes back for them, how else the portal chips fall. Are you favored at Clemson? Probably not. But again, who comes back for them? Who comes back for you? Right? Like, that's all going to matter. Clemson schedule-wise, they're at Miami. They're at NC State. They get the Noles and Wake and UNC at home. Georgia Tech at home as well. So, yeah, man, like I would fully expect to play Clemson twice next year, personally. So, like that, and they have Notre Dame, but Notre Dame does not factor into the ACC standings. Also, like, it's not. Am I crazy to have some hope that this defense gets better?
I don't think you're crazy at all. I think that should absolutely be the expectation. Again, it's going to be dependent upon who returns and who decides to go pro. And the rosters in college football have never been as fluid as they are now. So would it surprise me if you don't add maybe a name at some point in a couple months from now or something that you're not expecting? Again, I'm not saying anything secretive or anything out there. You just watch historically how this has played out the past year or two, that you could still get another piece. And it wouldn't shock me if, somebody didn't leave that you were otherwise think will be back. It's just how this works right now. We can look at the roster composition on April 21st. I just threw that out because it's my birthday and I'm selfish, but sometime mid-spring we'll have an idea as to what the to what the roster is really going to look like. But I fully expect that the defense will be better, and that they will have pieces that will allow the optimistic of us to dream the most optimistic of dreams. So, yeah, I think the defense would. I think the defense will play out, and if they continue to improve in the manner that they are, I think the defense will be better than they were next year. Yes,
it's going to be a pretty experience. Like if you get Jamie Robinson back, like the back end will be fairly experienced, right? Like I think you have to couch as someone in like, will this defensive staff coach well? Right? Will they not get embarrassed against decent to good offenses? We'll see. But like, you will have a lot of experience to play with. I think you're probably better at corner next year than you were this year, because either Duke Cooper bounces back, or AZ Thomas takes a step forward, or Renardo Green builds upon the nice year that he had. I mean, there maybe
Jerry
Kevin
and
Knowles,
Jones. Jerry and Jones has
right?
turned into a player. I mean,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like he's a
Absolutely.
useful player. Like so, I think that you can be better at corner next year, which will help you. Maybe one of those guys emerges as your nickel, which has been an issue this year for you. Like maybe Kevin Knowles doesn't have maybe he bounces back off your sophomore slump, right? I guess that's also possible. Linebacker, you'll be very experienced. Like you clearly don't have freaks at linebacker, right? Nobody is gonna take one of your linebackers with the top 100, or I don't know. Maybe one of them gets drafted eventually. Depends on what they run. Like I don't think Bethune runs well enough to get drafted, but like maybe if Deloach had an unreal combine time or something like that, he could. But like those are useful college backers.
Yeah.
For
I think
most part.
Deloach very much has a chance to be drafted just because of where the game is going and his skill set. And Tatum Bethune might be my favorite player on the team, so I will allow no Tatum Bethune slander at all. So,
and your guy Lundy he had to play like 40 snaps. Oklahoma ran 85 plays on you. He was useful at times. So I can see like the path for improvement of this defense, right? But you are pushing the chips all in for 2023. I feel like that's a year you're trying to sell off big time.
I mean, I think even a casual observer of the program will come to the conclusion that we are going for it in 2023. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, let's go. Let's do it.
And if you don't make defensive changes, coaching wise, that's where all the eyes are going to be. Like that. And that's a decision Mike has to make. Does he think he can upgrade the defensive staff and risk, the continuity? Although I would argue, what continuity do you have? You still have major communication issues in year 3 of running this defense. So what apple cart are you upsetting? But I don't know. I maybe they also
linebacker. I don't mean to jump in, but I'd love to see what what is currently being referred to as Hakeem Williams' teammate. That's how popular Hakeem Williams is within this fan base. But no, I mean, that kid's a really great athlete. You hear good things about him. I think that will be somebody that emerges in the linebacker core, and I'll be really interested to see, when we sit here and talk in the spring, before spring, about some of the names and who's going to emerge. We'll be fascinated to see what the linebacker core and if some of those younger guys stand out.
100%. What else here? It was good to see. Oh, I don't know. Like if you guys were watching at home, I thought it was like very windy on punts. Like that's just kind of a little note here. I was taking some notes on my phone during the game.
It was super windy pre-game to the point that when you were going through walkthroughs, it was significantly altering any kind of a longer pass. Any ball that was in the air for a prolonged period of time died down a little bit before kickoff, and I didn't think it was quite as impactful. But yeah, when we got there, and I was particularly looking, there was there's a flag, a U.S. flag on the other side on the top of the stadium, and it was moving. It was moving aggressively for the first 20 or 30 minutes of warm-ups and walkthroughs.
No doubt. What else?
That's your wind report. I know a lot of people want to listen to the Nolecast to hear how windy it was. So I apologize for rumbling through that previous 35 seconds there.
I will say, one of the reasons we did not instant react was that getting out of the stadium takes forever at Camping World.
I mean, I didn't have a positive experience at the stadium there.
What time did you get out of the hotel or get back to the hotel? Because like I don't think, I mean, it took me like an hour and 40 to get home, dude.
No, it took forever. I mean, we were fortunate to be able to sit where we were sitting. I had to get to the stadium a little bit earlier to set some stuff up. My fiance joined me later. She called me. She's like, they're not very helpful right now. I'm currently like standing in the nosebleed section because this is where they told me my tickets were. And I was like, well, that's maybe not the greatest staff. maybe not the greatest stadium experience there to be had at Camping World, but we'll move on and focus on stuff that is more important to our broader listenership. So,
yes. What did you see that the bowl game number for this is the highest rated bowl game so far?
I did not see that.
As of yesterday morning. I don't know what the Orange Bowl did.
Yeah, I'm sure the Orange Bowl did good numbers. It doesn't necessarily surprise me, man. It just looked like when both those teams ran out of the tunnel, I'm like, you know what, this just looks like a big time college football game. Oklahoma's uniforms are beautiful. Florida State's uniforms are getting back to the place where they are, where some of the better looking ones in the sport, and hopefully we continue to step in the right direction there. It just looked like a big time game with big time programs, big time brands. And to Oklahoma's credit, they came out and played in a manner that probably only continued to garner, interest of the casual college football fan.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like the time of the game made it pretty good as far as people being able to watch, right? Like it was after work, and the fact that the underdog jumped out early, I thought was pretty good. You're right. It's two iconic brands matching up. They've played some pretty damn good games over the years. 1980, obviously. I would argue that the Orange Bowl they played, like that was a terrible game to watch, but it was a national championship game. So there was that. And then the 2011 game in Tallahassee was just an incredibly good game. So I think you're right. Like the brand quality matters, but like if you're the SEC, if you're the Big Ten, you're watching, you're like,
yep.
All right, man.
Just another note point on your resume. Absolutely. And I know it was true 15 or 20 years ago, and it would be interesting to go back and look at that. But Wall Street Journal had a fairly thorough report at the time. I think this is around 2009. This was far from Florida State's. This is when you were still kind of climbing out of some of the doldrums of the mid 2000s. Florida State had the highest positive impact on year-to-year TV ratings, improvements in them for the bowl games. Now, again, that's tough, kind of small sample size and data set to extrapolate, but it was interesting to look at then. And I imagine that there's, I don't know if they're still number one, but I still think when you're talking about TV products, man, there's only 5 or 6 brands in college football that exceptionally move the needle, and Florida State is undoubtedly one of them.
Speaking of like moving the needle and big time brands, I put together a video for the Cover 3 YouTube channel and for CBS, and I always do like the what do current recruits remember? And like they definitely don't remember Tim Tebow playing for Florida now. They actually, I'm trying to remember my notes here. I think they were not alive for the last time Miami won a conference title, like not a national title, but that's certainly something. But speaking of current recruits, a guy who has signed with you, Lucas Simmons. Is he raw a little bit? Is he going to take some good coaching by Alex Atkins? Yes. He looks the part at Under Armour. I put it in the thread on 24/7 Sports. We did like the live update thread. I mean, he looks, 6'6", 6'7", and 300 and trim and moves well and takes the coaching. The coach out there actually is John Hevesy, who was Florida's offensive line coach under Mullen, a guy who has a reputation as a good coach and not somebody who recruits well. And so now he's hanging out, working the Under Armour stuff and just kind of taking a little break from college coaching. But it was cool to see Lucas absorb some of the coaching from him. Got to see Lucas, compared to like the a lost kid who signed with Alabama. Harris, the kid who signed with Florida, was there, and I thought Simmons looked good. So we'll watch this morning in some of the one-on-ones, which should be pretty exciting. But like Simmons is a body that you don't have on your team right now, and that's the kind of kid that like a Georgia or an Alabama or an Ohio State signs. And that's also the kind of kid that's very rare to hit the transfer portal.
Exactly. It's the entity that you don't get a second
Yeah.
second crack at. Now, will there be a one-off every once in a while? Sure, but you can look at the portal right now. We don't have a massive sample set as to what it's looked like over a couple of years, but you can look at it and quickly start to come to the realization that it is exceptionally rare that you get uh, offensive tackles and like game-changing defensive pieces. Now, I realize that Florida State has happened to land one of those and two of them with the addition of Verse, but that is the exception, not the rule. And I think it is only going to become more the case moving forward. And when one of those other super elite prospects do end up hitting the portal, certainly not accusing any entity or anyone of tampering out there, but I am under the impression that a lot of times the destination is already set. So I don't know that you're really going to get a chance at too many of those super elite talents along the line of scrimmage in the portal. And I can't express how excited I am about what Lucas Simmons can ultimately turn into at Florida State over time. I legitimately think you signed one of the 2 or 3 best tackles in the country, and like Bud said, it is a raw piece of clay that just there's not many of them, and there's not too many to be had. And you did some work there, absolutely,
No doubt about it. And it's just like just because Rodor busted. And just because Lloyd Willis is not going to hit at the level you need him to hit, doesn't mean you quit swinging. You have to you have to keep swinging at certain positions from the high school ranks because they just ain't out there. I was talking to a personnel guy of a really good team, like a top 5 rated team, and they're going to need tackles in the portal. And he's like, dude, I mean, it's the Cornelius kid from freaking Rhode Island and the Walter Rouse kid from Stanford who can't stay healthy. And like, I mean, we've seen some flashes when he stayed healthy, but it's like, this is bleak. Heck, like Florida, did you see yesterday? USC took Michael Tarquin.
Mm-hmm.
It was a starter at Florida. Now, and maybe he wouldn't have been next year. Maybe it's a situation like Cohen, where I thought Cohen, the kid at Alabama, might have gotten beaten out by the Booker kid that Bama signed this year, the really promising freshman. But they also lost Ethan White, who was a starter. Like I don't know. Like I'm curious to see the work that Florida does in the portal. I know this was not on the show notes, but to sustain their recruiting, they had a really nice class. They signed a lot of the top 40 or 50 kids in the state, not a lot of the top 10. They're going to need to have probably a better year next year. And I think their schedule is actually sort of difficult. Whereas like Miami's schedule is not that tough to me next year. Like their ACC draw, I think is okay. They do get FSU and Clemson, which is unfortunate for them. And they get A&M again. But like I think their other 9 games are fairly manageable if they get back to some sort of reasonable level. Like what's Florida's schedule next year? And how does your recruiting look if you go to Utah to open? That's interesting. I think they were. I think like everybody I know who covers Florida thought that Michael Pratt was their answer at QB, and then Tulane, to their credit and their collective, kept him. And I think, by the way, that's a situation to monitor, and why recruiting high school is going to be more important, because maybe some of these G5 schools pull that together and say, hey, like we can't have it, UBI for everybody on our team.
Right.
But maybe the local businesses for the one final year, this quarterback,
I can fire a single bullet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My favorite conversation about NLI is talking to friends of mine that coach at Georgia Southern, at Georgia State, at schools like that, trying to figure out, where they can. It's just interesting. It's a different perspective. But those guys are, Georgia Southern fans love college football. They will have a little, they'll have an arrow or two in the quiver. And I absolutely agree with you entirely. It's that will be very interesting to see how that plays out and what it means for the one-time retention of kids.
And UTSA did it with Frank Harris.
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of messed up the quarterback recruiting market in the transfer portal. You end up like with Florida taking a kid like Graham Mertz, and maybe it works out, but like clearly he was not plan A for them. I mean, I'm sure they'll say he was, and I'm sure they're lying if they do. So UF schedule. Got it here. Knowles in Gainesville. They have to go to LSU. They host Arkansas. They go to Missouri. They play Georgia neutral again. They go to South Carolina. They are at Kentucky. They host Tennessee, and they host Vandy. I mean, personally, and UF did not do this year, but like, in all due respect to my former podcasting colleague Barton Simmons, who's now the GM at Vandy, you kind of want Vandy to be your road game because you want the advantage of having a home game in the SEC. Like that draw from the West, like Arkansas and at LSU, it could be tougher, but it also could be easier. You could get a rebuilding Auburn team, right? Like you could play Mississippi State. That's not the easiest draw in the world. So I don't know. What does UF's recruiting look like if they're like 7-5? Just some things to ponder here. And you, I mean, I think the odds that you don't put up like 20 wins in a 2-year span are relatively low. You know what I'm saying? That's a nice thing to recruit off. I'm encouraged where you are as a program. Like Mike's done a hell of a job with his turnaround, and they have a chance to really cash it in next year, which if you go back, 21 games ago, you're starting 0-4. You lost to Jacksonville State. That's tough.
Just think of where we were, where we started the show, where we were at 5:30 p.m. last early signing day, and you did your podcast, and you did your podcast. You did a Nolecast, and you rightfully said, it's getting late early, and the turnaround that's taken place there from a personnel perspective and the job that you did developing your own roster is exceptional. And you are going to enter 2023 as one of the better situated programs in college football. And that is freaking nuts. And congratulations to Mike and the entire staff, both coaching staff and all of the behind the scenes staff and support staff that made that happen.
You might be top 10 to start the season.
I think you're going to be a single-digit preseason team. I do.
Like, okay, off the top of your head, who? And I know we're running a little bit long, but like I got a couple more minutes here before I got to jet out to practice. The teams that we're confident will be ranked ahead of you in the preseason: Georgia, Bama, for sure.
Ohio State.
They always are. Ohio State, Michigan, because McCarthy's coming back, right? Okay. USC because Caleb's back.
Depends on what SC continues to do in the portal too. I mean, they tend to hit. They don't tend to hit singles in the portal. They tend to hit deep balls. Tennessee will be an interesting one, and other than that, I think you're right there. And like, obviously, it'll be dependent upon who returns and the work that you continue to do in the portal.
Will LSU be ahead of you?
I think LSU will be within 2 spots of you either way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like next year's LSU game is going to be like a 9 versus 11 or a 7 versus 9 or something like that.
Will Clemson?
Maybe not. I don't know. There's some growing skepticism of Clemson. Now, look, that's only a reflection of how freaking good they've been, and the fact that 2-3 lost seasons makes you wonder as to whether or not you're coming down from the mountaintop. But you'll be within 2 or 3 on either side of Clemson, in my opinion, as well.
I guess the other 2 I would think about: Notre Dame, because they closed strong, potentially. I don't think Oklahoma, obviously, because like they need to win more games, and they're losing some talent off this team. Penn State. That would be a 10-win Penn State team. You bring back a whole lot. They would have just won if they win the Rose Bowl. Also, if Cam Rising comes back for Utah, and they beat Penn State, I guess you could say it. Yeah, I'm trying to think here. Thinking of. So, like, you're somewhere between 7 and 12 to start the year. I'm almost certain. That's kind of awesome too.
Let's talk in 2 weeks. Let's talk in
Yeah.
the middle of January when you know what the decision of so Jamie's gonna announce on tomorrow. Although Jamie just I mean, hat tip to you, dog. He's having a lot of fun with the with the process on social media and everything else. I don't know that there's a definitive timetable on Jared versus decision. I think you'll hear from Fabian within the next week. I think you'll know. Sounds like you'll know on Jamie tomorrow. Fabian maybe by the 7th at the latest, maybe the 10th, and then Verse. I would imagine that you'll know by the 15th. So, let's circle back to this conversation then, and if you retain in the manner that I think you might, I think that we can talk about a single digit being likely, if not probable, next to Florida State's name.
I mean, that would be also like if you're the TV networks, you would love to have a top 10 matchup to start the year.
Hell yeah, you would. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Awesome, man. All right. Anything else we need to talk about here? If you guys are just a couple people joining the show late, love the offense, defense, frowny face, recruiting. We're looking ahead to junior days coming up, and I have to get out to Under Armour practice. So enjoyed it, man. Little Noel cast with some coffee. Good.
The old 8:00 New Year's Eve Nolecast. No, as always, thank you to all our sponsors, Louisiana Hot Sauce, Tarpon Cellars, the legendary team,
Congruity,
all the great people at Charlie Park and Matt Lewis. Did you get to see Matt?
No, I did not run into Matt, but I was texting with Matt, and I think he made it over to see Matt Thompson.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, Matt Lewis and the team at Congruity, we do have a new partnership to announce there. We're not going to announce it an hour and 5 minutes into a podcast. We'll do that on the next one. As always, congruityhr.com if you want to reach out to me as I don't know the exact number. It's been a great partnership. And from working with Matt directly at my previous place of employment, I can only say that it's first-class service. So, as always, we'll be back with you maybe 3 or 4 days from now, have a chance to have a further perspective of Buds at the Under Armour practice, and, we'll probably have a better idea as to what the roster will look like for next year. So, with that, this has been the Nolecast. We do have a question about the Battles In. I don't know of announcement on that. I will tell you, and I meant to mention this on the previous podcast, that we signed a IP deal with the university. So any future announcements that we have, all you jokers who tweeting me about Boston College uniforms won't be able to do that anymore because we'll be able to tweet out the full damn uniform. And I'm very excited about that. And that's also tied to numerous other official partnerships that we have that you guys will continue to be able to see and will continue to be able to grow upon. So that is my quick 2-minute Battles End plug.
Now, if you have the IP deal, can I kind of grill you on this a little bit? Can we edit the uniforms still to make them look like the old uniform? Like if you own the IP now, if you can do the deal, like can you edit them to make it look like the old ones?
Can I put Can I put Jordan Travis? Let me announce a player that I've already announced.
Jordan in a Jameis
uniform. Yeah. I was gonna say, can I put Jordan Travis in James Wilder Jr.'s uniform? Yes, that would be that. I'll probably get a quick "don't ever do that again" note in my email inbox, but that's a great idea. But
I mean, I think now, or what if it's been like 10 years since the redesign? What if they have a new redesign and they go like somewhere between what your old uniform was, which was great, and the new one, which is just not as good? That would be cool, and then you guys could use that.
So I mentioned this 6 months ago. This is not any inside knowledge that I've gained in the last month and a half or so with doing the work that I've done with the Battles In. So I'll repeat it again because I don't feel like I'm burning anybody or sharing information that I shouldn't. I said 6 months ago that I think the uniform will look more kind of like what Oklahoma State's uniform looks like. If you guys want to go look at that, very similar to what they have. It's just a little bit more toned down on some of the arm end and things like that. So you can go look at some of what Oklahoma State's stuff looks like, and it wouldn't shock me if that is maybe a little bit more what Florida State looks like in the next year or two.
That'd be cool, man. I'm very down for that. Also, shout out to Battles In for getting like Jake Owen.
Yeah, it was fun
to come play the Block Party concert. That was cool.
Yeah, that was great. Shout out to him for being a Florida State fan and being flexible on what it would take to get him there. And no, that was awesome. If you guys were in Orlando, had a block party, I was late arriving because traffic and
the whole country was all these flights.
Yeah, but it was an awesome time. Seemed to be a great time from what I could tell. Just a family friendly atmosphere and a great way for everybody to kind of get together on what felt like a Friday night. I guess it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, but it was great to get down there and see a bunch of great Florida State fans. And anytime that you get to run into Marvin Jones, it's a great night on my end. So it was a fun evening, definitely.
No doubt about it, buddy. I will see you next time.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, Happy New Year.